Welcome to another James Loves Butter episode upload. Good, welcome to all of you, anybody new or anybody back. Good to have you here. Slightly different premise today. We're going to talk about some other stuff, and under the banner of the title, the guys Versace versus Moschino. We're talking about in the 90s, mid to late 90s. Hence why I've got, it's not my everyday attire, guys, but hence why I've got the classic Moschino polo shirt, garish as usual, Moschino in gold, embroidered. This is Moschino couture, actually, a piece that I picked up some years ago, not from the mid to late 90s. This was, I think I picked this up sort of 2015, but it was a bit of a nod to the yesteryear of Moschino. I picked it up. I just so happened to have an old Versace denim jacket. There was Versace versus Versace jeans, the couture and all that kind of thing. This was actually a Versace jeans jacket that I picked up some years ago. My older jeans denim jackets of Versace were Versace couture. There's different factions and elements of all these sort of luxury brands and fashion houses and stuff, but yeah, this is not a bad coat actually. I picked this up at Bicester Village. My mum got me this. Hi mum. I think it must have been, we got this about 6 years ago now, and I think then we paid about maybe 200 or something like that, and I went recently, and then today's version within, and Bicester Village is sort of cheaper. It's an outlet place, but they're like 500-600 quid. Variable, dependent. I think the last one I looked at was had gold buttons, really nice. But all my old Versace Moschino stuff's long gone. This here it's off-white actually by Virgil Abloh, but I picked this up not to wear certainly, but it was definitely a nod in appreciation to the old Moschino hats of the mid to late 90s, which I'll get into and talk about a little bit. So I just want to put a shout out to Wesley, thanks. President Nixon, you know you are, in Devon. Jack Hustle, aka Lee Be Kind, good to speak to you. Simon, Nicholas last night, thanks for the input, it was good to talk. And I had a friend that talked about doing some editing within this podcast. It's not a podcast, is it, but whatever it's called, this channel, just to help sort of enhance it a little bit, which I really appreciated, the positive feedback. So what I'm looking at is Versace Moschino and the difference between the two fashion houses and what that meant to me and a collective and demographic of people that I was involved with at that time. A kind of a little nod to the people just do nothing guys. They've kind of sort of really embraced that Moschino, the Nike Air Max and stuff that was really taken back from like my era of the mid to late 90s. Have kind of brought it back a little bit, so to speak, and nostalgically, and that whole scene. I do want to say, whatever I'm talking about today is contextual and it's in hindsight and it's reflective back. So I certainly do not want to condone drug taking, violence, criminality, manipulation, deception, destructiveness, or any of that sort of thing. But in some things that I'm going to touch upon or skim over, that stuff's going to come up a little bit. So because I'm trying to paint a picture of a time that I was involved in London in the mid to late 90s, criminality, drug taking, cocaine, jungle music, crack cocaine. I watched a documentary about Jar Jar Soze last night from the PLM Click crew, PCP, PDC. He's about my age now, and he was talking about some stuff when he was in gangs, and that whole Moschino Versace crew, jungle music, and in the rave, and You know, he said someone passed him a zoo and he thought it was a weed spliff, and it turned out it was a crack spliff, and he smoked that. And him and his crew at that time, they felt like they were like the black Tony Montana, and it just exacerbated in their need for high-end designer fashion and cocaine or crack cocaine, which fueled both. They're both very addictive, and combined together is very heady, very fast money, quick money, and of course results in prison, as it did for me too. But back to what the channel's talking about, or what the title or the premise of this upload is Versace versus Moschino. And I've been talking to some guys and looking at the difference and how that was perceived, or what I perceived that to be back in that time. And I think, I just want to say hi to my sister Martine. I love you lots. It's about time that I gave you a quick mention, otherwise you'd be very upset, so hi. Versace, as I've come to sort of think back on at that time, it was very decadent, it was very opulent, it was very detailed, it was quite, although they did do the brighter, louder pieces, if you can remember, to J-Lo's dress, that was a bit late, I think it was like a palm tree green vibe. You also had the classic Elizabeth Hurley dress with the gold safety pins. If I think back to what I had, I used to go to, there was a time that I went to Bond Street, to the Versace store on Bond Street in about 97, after acquiring a large amount of money, substantially large amount of money, of disposable income, illicitly. And I went in and I bought, you know, I think I mentioned this one in my previous videos or something, but I bought, you know, the matching jeans, you'd wear the matching shirt, but this was all sort of, this was like a navy blue, and then the matching denim jacket. In fact, shout out to my friend Matthew, I gave him that Versace denim jacket many years later, and I asked him early what it felt for him when he got that jacket, and you know, I was 30, he was 18, I'd kind of taken him under my wing and introduced him to some very nefarious activities and drug-taking behaviour. And there were some funny times too, don't get it twisted. It went pretty dark. And he says it was something beyond his reach, a Versace jacket, and when he put that Versace jacket on, it was also the thing back in the day, wearing your collars up. We always used to wear our collars up. I was like, where it all stems from, I wonder what that means. But he said, when I put that jacket on, I felt like royalty, like somebody, or a don, as he as he said. So I think Versace definitely had that sort of je ne sais quoi, that sort of, you know, if you look at Gianni Versace, which happened, I bought a cat when Gianni Versace died. I did buy a black cat and name it Gianni, as a tribute. I was very deluded. Don't think I was living I was a drug addicted lunatic, but I had a penchant for nice clothes, which kept me very sort of deluded for a long time actually, if I looked alright and, you know, all that kind of thing. Oh, here's a classic Versace Dreamer. There's a touch left. Takes me back to the mid-90s, man, mid to late 90s, 97, 98 in Croydon, South London. Talking of which, the shops that we go to for, say, Versace was the Versace Bond Street shop. Where else was a shop called Proibito, I think, that neck of the woods. Where else would I go? Harrods. There was a place called Apparel in Croydon. There was an affiliation of Charlie Cray around that area too. I remember walking through the Whitgift Centre with my friend Wesley, who knew Charlie, and we said hi to Charlie on the way through, which all added to the delusional, egotistical nonsense that my brain was then. And Selfridges would have been in there as well. So Versace was like royalty, Roman, and they were very known for their sort of Baroque, their silk shirts. I think then they were £500. That was in about 97. Now they're even more. A pair of Moschino jeans, Versace jeans, particularly the Moschino jeans with the loud prints. I think we were paying £150 to £200 for a pair of jeans then, and that was like, I say, 98. And what we would tend to do is sometimes we'd get the jeans, the shirt, the waistcoat, and the hat to match. And it was all part of that jungle scene. And Moschino is very loud and out there. And there was some Versace stuff that was like that, but Moschino was different. They seemed to be in touch with, or we gravitated towards it. You know, you had to have a certain bravado about you, I guess, to wear that kind of stuff, and you had to have a certain demeanor and way about you and way of walking and talking to sort of pull it off. Definitely, it was more so affiliated with the black culture, I would say. Trying to tread carefully because, you know, I don't want to be cancelled. I'm being careful in how I say things, but I would say it because of jungle being predominantly black and that line of music, and then the undercurrent and cocaine, crack cocaine, particularly where I was sort of a culturally black thing. And obviously it changed years later. Moschino was another thing altogether, and I was trying to compare the two, and it was loud, but they seemed to be so, for me, it was almost if I was going to make some clothing and put some prints on it, that it's what I would think of. They did some very famous jeans called Moschino, or there was like a Moschino jeans with Monopoly stuff, Monopoly money all over and stuff. They were really popular, and they also had the sort of the Las Vegas Atlantic City kind of slots fruit machine shirt, which I had, which actually that shirt I had for many years later, and it turned out in the end that I had a Jamaican acquaintance that was selling crack and heroin at the time, that I end up swapping that £500 shirt with him for, I don't think it was 500, I think they're about 300, 350, that particular one. But anyway, long story short, they're going for a lot of money nowadays. I think I gave it him for, I think it was 2 rocks of heroin and 2 bags of brown. You know, I was just, that's where I was, you know, and yeah, it was too small for him as well. He used to wear that, and he was in a hostel with me, wearing around in this ridiculously expensive Moschino shirt. There was also a thing then that you used to get tags on them, these little orange, these white tags, Moschino and Versace tags, that people would still wear on the item of clothes. Like, obviously the newer it was, the newer the tag looked. So it was almost like, yeah, I've just been out, I've just done an earner, I've just made some money, I've just bought this, I've just done a lick for these garments, and now I'm going out with, you know, getting the club. You know, there's numerous clubs, whether you talk about, you know, Roast, AWOL, Desire, at different venues, One Nation, Bagley's, which is a venue obviously, and then the jungle sort of Laserdrome in Peckham, but the jungle then sort of went into garage, and the opulence transferred over to the garage scene. So it was like, you know, you'd do something on a Friday or Thursday where you'd make some money, you'd go out up the West End, you'd go and purchase, you know, designer clothes, your Moschino and your Versace stuff. I think Versace stuff was more sort of, like I say, a bit more sophisticated, and more if you're going out with maybe a girl, or you'd be more tend to wear your Gucci loafers with your Versace stuff, but with your Moschino stuff back then, it was your Air Max, your Nike Air Max, and that kind of thing, you know. So you go out, you make your money, you go and buy a couple of pieces of designer clothes. I mean, there was one particular set of people I know that were doing a thing within a well-known high-end supermarket. They do food and clothes, a food hall, that should give it away. So back in the 90s, they used to leave sort of like a £300 float in the till. And this group of guys was going around and then popping the door of an M&S and going through and then clearing out, you know, they'd be like in big ones, like 10 or 20 tills in a row, and they'd just take obviously 10 or 20 times 300, and they were going around the country getting that. And I remember I used to see these guys, and they were always dripped in head to toe Moschino and Versace. The Moschino was more the raving gear. I think that's what I was trying to allude to. When you're going out to the jungle rave, it was all loud, proud out there. And you know, it was also about who had got the latest or the most exclusive, depending where you shopped and stuff. Sometimes you could be in a rave or out and about and you'd see people in maybe the same shirt, but it was almost like a distinguishing factor of people that was in a certain lifestyle and had a certain way of communicating, were just in it. The irony is, back in that day, when you walk up the road and you're dressed and you're all moshed up sort of thing, or all Versaced up, and you know, you'd see somebody else, you'd screw each other and you'd be looking at each other down, you'd either get in conflict or you just, you know, there was an energy, there was a badness. But the reality is we were very similar and we would have really got on. I got in some really dark situations from that sort of thing. I'm trying to not go too off track, but this is kind of off the cuff, and some conversations that I've had over the last couple of days. So is there a winner? Versace and Moschino. I think Gianni Versace was a pivotal figure within the fashion industry, you know, and he got at a certain time all the supermodels, your Cindy Crawford, your Naomi Campbell, Kate Moss, I can't think of the other girl's name, Eva or whatever it was. But there was a collective and he was a powerhouse, and then Donatella Versace went on to do some stuff. Moschino, there was a guy called Franco Moschino, but I think he may have died. I'm not too sure on that fact actually. But they never quite hit the lofty heights in those years of Versace, but they were very, I had a lot of that stuff, man. I loved it, and I always liked the sort of playful nature and the loud nature. And there was a little sister or brother of Moschino, which was Iceberg, and they did a lot of the stuff with the Disney stuff on it and all that kind of thing. Not too much more to say on it really, but I wish I had some of that stuff from years ago. It's really cool. It's very collectible. It's worth a lot of money nowadays, actually. Cocaine crack, Versace and Moschino was very prominent to me, very sort of addictive actually. Yeah, it was really addictive. I mean, no shit, cocaine and crack cocaine's addictive. YouTube, I'm saying this is past, this is not me anymore, this is many years ago. I'm sort of talking about a trajectory that I went on. I managed to break free off and stuff, but it was all very sort of hedonism. That's my thoughts on Versace versus Moschino. Who's the winner? Speaking to my mate Wes earlier, we kind of pipped Versace, and I'm not talking about the stuff nowadays because I think then it was made differently. There was a different quality to it. There was a different. It was an unobtainable sort of thing. It was really like. It was like gold dust, man. When you got a new item, a new piece of Versace or Moschino, it was like, especially if you got, I'd always get the Versace coat hangers with it when I went, I bargained with the bloody shop assistant, you know, and yeah, it was just fantastic stuff. Anyway, that's me, over now. Have a great weekend. Versace's on top, but only just, followed shortly by Moschino. Take it easy.